Hello, everyone, and welcome back today to another one of the Youth Champions interviews. Today, we have a really special guest, Joseph, which some of the current students may be familiar with, one of the program facilitators for Youth Champions for the fall 2024 cohorts. Today, we're going to have, as you guys know, a conversation. We tailor it around Youth Champions, Joseph's professional experience, but at some point, the conversation just carries, and you guys are going to get to know Joseph a little bit more. Before we jump into anything else, I want to allot some time for Joseph to give a quick introduction of himself.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. Great to be here. My name is Joseph. I've been a facilitator and mentor with Youth Champions just for this fall cohort, and so it's my first time. I'm super happy to be here. I grew up in LA. I left LA for about 12 years to go to the Bay Area to go to school and started my career in tech. I've been in mostly a tech industry for about now a decade, working as a product manager at different tech companies across Silicon Valley and also Seattle. And I recently moved back to LA in 2022 July, so almost 2 years ago. And I'm super excited to invest in LA and the LA community that invested so much in me growing up. So I'm super excited to be here and meet you all.
So, as you all heard, Joseph has experience on the tech side and specifically in PM. Joseph, I wanted to ask you a little bit about personal development, which is a lot about what Youth Champions deals with. We take in students who are young adults who typically don't have necessarily figured out exactly what they want to do, nor do they even understand goal setting and those type of functions, which is really what Youth Champions teaches, is that personal development side and becoming an adult once you hit college or the real world. You work in PM, which deals a lot with people and dealing with the deliverable of a product and making sure the execution is done right and correctly and on time. So can you tell me a little bit about your opinion on what does personal development mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think personal development means different things to different people because, of course, it's personal. But I think it really means like a view of like how you want to grow and being able to find different ways to get to that different growth trajectory. And that can be by surrounding yourself with mentors, both in person in real life or on YouTube or also in books and such. And so I think it can also mean like just putting yourself out there and experimenting what works and what doesn't. And so I think it, for one, personal development is really about where you want to grow and where you're at right now. And then two, like the different steps or ways to be able to do that. And there are so many opportunities out there to be able to grow.
Yeah, and actually, a lot of the times I've realized when people are dealing or going through personal development, typically there's a point in their life which was a milestone or a turning point, and that's why people's personalities change. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a turning point or a large milestone in your life that kind of changed the trajectory of where you were looking?
Yeah, that's um that's a really interesting question. I think that um, one key thing that changed my life was actually in seventh grade, um, which was quite young. I think that when I was a seventh grader, a lot of I had a lot of pressure from my parents to be a particular like way. Like I was a firstborn kid. My parents are immigrants, and so I had a lot of expectations that I had on myself, and they put on me. But I had a teacher in the seventh grade. His name was Mr. Glick. He taught social studies to my seventh grade class, and he had a seventh grade motto for us, which said that if you treat a seventh grader like more than they are, they will like rise to that occasion. And he was a person in the military. I think he was some sort of colonel that went into education after he exited like the armed forces and devoted his time to students and really seeing more out of the students that he taught. And I think he saw a lot in me, he saw a lot in every student that he taught and gave us aspirations to do more than what we thought we could. Like, for example, as a seventh grader, he had us sum up current events and then give presentations weekly about that, pretending that we were in a news show. And like at that time, I didn't know how to use different things like PowerPoint to aggregate different informations together. I didn't know how to put together a script and present it. I didn't know how to go and do public speaking and lead a team to be able to do that. And those are all new skills for me that I never thought that I would be able to do. And he sort of took the approach of like, this is what it's going to be like, so figure it out. And some people took that as really tough love and didn't like it. But for me, I really thought that vision of being able to just rise to that expectation of just like, well, he has this expectation that I can do it. I must be able to do it. And so let's try. And I think by being able to rise to that occasion in that small seventh grade class, it really taught me and showed me that if I set my eyes on something more than what I have right now, I can actually achieve it. And I think in that, that showed me from a very small perspective, if I can do that small thing, which is pretty big for a seventh grader, I can do even more. And I think in my life, I've applied that concept time and time again to grow in different ways throughout like eighth grade, high school, college, and even my own career. That's something that I was a really turning point for me that really changed my life, I would say.
And like following up on the personal development, I know you went to UC Berkeley, which is a big grind school in terms of the studying. I currently mentor a student who's actually an alumni of Youth Champions as well, and he goes to UC Berkeley as well. He wants to kind of go down the same. So I'm going down the investment banking route, and he wants to do the same thing, and he wants to get a hang of the technicals. And PM, I know the recruiting pipeline for PM and the technicality of industries like that. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was during your time in college and even when you started off maybe your first year out in the real world, what were some kind of key mindset shifts that you had to go through that kept you pushing through the tough times with the late nights?
Yeah, I think that, um, yeah, that's a good question as well. I think, the tough time starting I think starting a career in tech from college and maybe any career actually from college is so different because you think that you take this set of knowledge you gain in college and then you think you're going to bring that into the real world and it's just going to work. And that's actually not reality whatsoever. Like the skills you learn in college are a great foundation, but they are just the foundation. They are just a starting point. And there's so much more learning to be had in the professional world in both soft skills and even technical knowledge that I had to level up very quickly my first year out of college. And I think that um, as you go through the US education system, you are cohorted with people within your year up until you graduate college. And after that, you're in a workforce with people that have just started your career, like a new college grad, like where I was, and people that are ending their careers that are like in their 60s and things. And it's just a big mix of people. And in that, you can feel very much of a sense of like, what am I doing here? Like, what do I have to contribute when this 6-year-old who knows everything already is like talking in meetings and I have nothing to contribute? And I think in that, the mind shifts that I've had to go through is really understand like, what am I there for in this particular organization? And what is the value that I bring? And I think that as a new college grad, in the midst of so many career people that are out there, you can feel a sense of imposter syndrome, which I've definitely felt. And I really had to find security in my own value and who I was as a person, but also know that like I'm not there to perform at the way that a 6-year-old who's been in industry for like 40 plus years is meant to perform. I am there to learn and I'm there to be able to just contribute. And my perspectives are actually still valuable. One thing that I learned that I was really shocked by was like my questions that I would ask during meetings were actually challenging to those who had been in industry for a very long time because it shifted the way that they thought about things. When they started to have to explain why things were, they also realized that it didn't make sense for the status quo to actually be that case. And I think in that, I found the power in being able to I didn't have the word for this at the time, but I have it now, which is this concept of first principle thinking, of being able to go back to the fundamental basis of why something exists and being able to ask and answer that and help others who have been thinking about things in a particular way to perhaps see things differently because I've asked this question. And just because you're new doesn't mean that you don't have value. Like your value is actually in the things that you don't know to challenge those who have been um, I guess, enforcing the status quo to really think differently. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to really find security in yourself when you're firstly new in the workforce, but also lean into the things that you do learn in college, which is hopefully like how to think and not what to think, and just try to use the tools that you've learned in college on how to think about things to shape how your colleagues who might be older than you in industry to have better ideas together.
Yeah, and Joseph, you mentioned a concept during your response there. So another question that we like to ask everyone that we interview is if you could talk a little bit about some books or influential people that you followed maybe throughout your time in college, throughout your time in your career so far, that have helped kind of guide those mindset shifts or, the kind of mentality that you have now.
Yeah, I think there's two books that come to mind. One is pretty popular. It's called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, who's a Stanford professor. I think it's pretty popular now, but it effectively talks about how having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset helps you accomplish more of what you want. And the concept there is that if you believe that you can change to address the challenges that are in front of you, whatever they may be, no matter what your life stage, chances are you have a better chance of succeeding in accomplishing those goals versus a fixed mindset where you really think you can't change and therefore the circumstances around you aren't likely to change or they will get worse. And having a perspective where you can change and you can have more opportunities to shift not only yourself but the circumstances around you will lead to better outcomes that you're really looking for. And so that was really helpful for me to challenge what I thought was I thought I had a growth mindset coming into reading that book. I'm generally a very positive person. I like to be able to take on challenges. But that book helped me see places where I did have a fixed mindset. And I typically hit against those fixed mindsets when I'm really going through like new challenges. And that was an insight that I brought out of that book where I really found myself realizing that when I'm at the brink of my skill set or where I am right now, I tend to shy away and feel like, man, I can't do that. And in that is sort of a fixed mindset. And to push through that has really helped me time and time again when I realize I'm in that place. So, Growth Mindset is definitely one of those books. Another book that I read shortly after graduating from college is called The Defining Decade. I forget who wrote the book, but it is a book that talks about how to use your 20s in a way that is most efficient to help you getting to what you want to live the rest of your life doing. And the principal concept of that book is experimentation and being bold to try new things at least once and evaluating and being honest about how you feel about them to see if you like it and can go and do that more, or you don't like it so you can try something else. And so when you're young, I think you only see the life that you've lived, which is like maybe when I read that book, 21 years and maybe like the last like 8 of those, which was like something that I actually could think more about who I was as an individual. But you have so much more of life to live. But oftentimes people like kind of just carry what they think is or a view of what they think life should be like, and they just carry that forward. And they're just not happy because they've just never really evaluated, do I like this thing? And if I don't like this thing, should I do something different? And so that book really helped me think about how to live life. And it's not just like you don't get, in some ways, you do get one shot in life to just live. You only have one life to live. So you want to live it to the fullest. And in order to live it to the fullest, you got to experiment and try new things. And the world is changing and you can change with it. And you should be willing to go and like try new things and really figure that out quickly, which is what she says the 20s are for, to really figure out what you like and how to really index that. But I do think that having a growth mindset and trying new things is something that I extend out even past my 20s that I think anybody, young or old, can really do. So I would say those two books are super helpful for me.
And we talked a lot about personal professional development and growth in these first like 15 minutes. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is now that you're leading a cohort of high school students who are thinking completely different things, that maybe some of them don't know exactly even if they want to go to college. Again, like youth champions takes in people who are, we have kids UCLA, Berkeley, SC, everywhere, but we also have kids that simply want to go to trade school or some even want to go to the military. Now that you are teaching and leading these cohorts, how do you think about giving this same sort of advice to a student in high school who interprets things a lot differently? I remember in high school when I would have these kind of more professional conversations with people, it would come in through one year and it would go out through the other just because I don't think I had the processing capacity to like understand exactly the advice that you were giving me. Now that you're leading this high school this cohort of high schoolers, how do you think about instilling these kind of mindsets into young adults?
Yeah, that's that is something that I'm still trying to get better at and figuring out how do I pass down the wisdom that might just go in one ear and out the other. And I think part of it is um, I think what I really want to instill the students that I work with with is just a sense of their own personal value and knowing that they can make a difference in the world. And I think we talk a lot about self-talk and how you see yourself and having a vision for yourself. And I think I really want to help students really cultivate an idea that they matter, their visions matter, and if they can really hold on to that, I think that'll go far. I see a lot of people in the working world now who feel like they may not matter or their dreams are sort of like pushed aside or they just don't have a strong vision for themselves. And for one reason or another, they've forgotten or they never had that. And I think for these students here who are so young, they're not going to remember every single piece of advice I give them. I must sound like such an old man, like spewing different things from my life already. But if I can let them leave the class with a sense of knowing that they really do matter in the world, no matter what their background is, no matter where they want to go next. And they have that self confidence and that belief in themselves that they can take on whatever challenges, whatever they want comes next. That'll be success for me. And so I don't know how to exactly do that, but that's my goal when reaching out to these students of like, if I can connect with them personally, if I can at least make them feel like they are valued, um, hopefully whatever wisdom that I share with them next, like will stick. But if it doesn't and they walk away just knowing that they matter and they can do what they want to do, they can achieve that. That's really what I think matters at that particular age, since, the world is their oyster. And if they can really feel like they can like really take that on and feel courageous and victorious and like champions doing that, they're definitely going to find their pearl.
And this was actually something that I was just talking to Jay Martin about, who was one of the most recent interviews that I did. Was the as an alumni, I can genuinely say this, and like I recall, um, for me the importance of like my facilitator. Like I still remember AJ, I still remember Anna because I interacted with these people for a whole year, and like I was a part of Youth Champions from its inception, and I was a returning student every year. Like I just every year I wanted to come back. Um, and I recall vividly the relationships that I had built with these people. Like I recall texting Anna, "Hey, I just got into USC. Like I just got into USC." Like the excitement that I felt just to tell her, because a lot of the mindset shifts that she taught me were things that I used when I was writing these applications. So yeah, I just like every time that I'm speaking to a facilitator, I like to let you guys know like how even though kids, especially like my age, I remember in high school, like don't really express it, but you guys mean a lot. Like especially the things that we learn like are very valuable.
Oh, thank you. I feel a lot of love for that. So thanks for sharing that, Eddie. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And this is actually really a thing that I was waiting to ask you, especially since I know your experience in tech, or dealing with tech. Now that technology is changing so much, like artificial intelligence and everything that's going on, even inside of the classrooms, I wanted to ask you about your opinion on the education system and what do you think about it going forward?
Yeah. I think my first thought about the education system is a lot of gratitude. Like, I am a product of the public school system, and I would not trade that education for anything else. I think that one of the great things about public education is just bringing a bunch of people who are from different neighborhoods together to learn how to collaborate with people like them and not like them. And so I think that is a pro. I would say that my opinion of the education system now, in reflection, is that I think that there's a lot of what we call standards, where teachers have to teach a particular set of things in order to say like the student has is done with a particular grade. And I think that is helpful to at least bring a set of students at a particular age group that brings some sort of consistency to what kids are being taught. But I also realize that everyone is different. People have different learning styles and people have different needs. And I wish that the education system was a little bit more tailored to the individual. And that's really hard in the way that education is funded today and how resources are distributed. And there just, quite frankly, isn't enough resources. And so, in that, I think what's been difficult is that, like, now looking back, I wish I had more self advocacy for myself and what I needed. And I wish there was someone to help me really to advocate for what I would benefit from. And I had a couple of teachers do that for me, but there just wasn't nearly enough. And so, and I didn't have the language at the time to say like, actually, I need this, to learn better. And I would value more of that. But I also think that being able to supplement your education by things like youth champions, by other programs out there is like a really good way to get outside of just what a teacher can teach you. And I realized that, like in my education system, the things I learned in class, like math and science and like English, etc., were critical. But the soft skills that I learned in being in extracurriculars, like speech and debate, and like different clubs to like build leadership and be exposed to different things is just as important too. And that's sometimes not something that's a requirement in the education system to pick up leadership skills and soft skills. And so, in some respects, I think that the education system gives a great foundation for kids to like hopefully take advantage of what's there to move forward. But I also think that it's not nearly enough in helping a kid understand like there are different pathways out there because you're unique and you have different ways to learn. And I wish it was a little bit more tailored. And I also think that like the education system, like is not just like one system. Like the school district is a system. The community college system is a system. The Cal States and the UCs are a system, and the systems don't talk together. And you as a person need to figure out how to maybe use more than one system to supplement your own education. And I think there are pathways to do that. But being able to figure that out is like the most American thing ever, where we as individuals can choose our own individual path. We've got to figure it out ourselves. And so I think that I feel very fortunate to have people to like point me in the right direction, but there just isn't a ton of resources and people out there to point, enough students in a direction that might be best for them.
Definitely the resources thing was something that was a huge part of like my life as well. Like organizations like Youth Champions specifically was life changing, and other programs that I was a part of. But I know I've realized after talking to a lot of kids like who are my age that I was at one point, they just aren't aware, and there aren't people to tell you like, wait, there's this. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like that does unfortunately happen sometimes in like the public school system, given how large it is. Just there's a lot of students. But actually, to follow on the education route that we're talking about right now, we have about roughly like 10 students at UC Berkeley, and we're probably going to bring an ambassador at UC Berkeley pretty soon too. So one thing that I would like to ask you is if you could tell us, maybe if the UC Berkeley kids are watching, a little bit about your experience at Cal, and how was your time there? How did you enjoy yourself? How did you meet people? If you could tell us a little bit about your time in undergrad.
Yeah. Um, Gosh. I think like my time in undergrad was bittersweet. Like I came from LA and I moved to Berkeley. I was a spring admit. And so I did my first semester, which is the fall freshman year at ELAC, East Los Angeles College. And then when I made it up to Berkeley, it was January of second semester, and it was like one cold and like super rainy. And I honestly had a really tough adjustment period because I think second semester, a lot of students had already met their friends, and so I met my friends through the dorms pretty much. And I think in that, um, I honestly had a really hard time acclimating from SoCal to NorCal. And I think in that I struggled academically and personally. And like I started getting really bad grades at Berkeley that I've never seen before. And that really challenged me to the core. And I think that's not uncommon, but for me, I had to learn a lot about like perseverance and resilience and finding a good group of people to surround myself with in order to like move forward. And I wanted to be a business major at Berkeley, and like the Haas Business School is like tough to get into. Whoever's if you're watching and you're like about this, like you had to apply sophomore year, and I got rejected, and so I was like scrambling to find a new major. And I eventually went back to what I wanted to do, which was work in technology. Eventually found my way to a computer science degree. And in that, I found a whole new group of people that I had never talked to in my first 2 years of college to really journey on this with. And it was like the hardest 2 years of my life where I hustled, I grinded, I asked for help in ways that I never thought I could ask for help. But in that group of people, we journeyed together to get our degrees. And I think in that like the last 2 years were some of the best 2 years of my life where like I think the first years of my time at Berkeley was really trying to figure out who I was and like what I was about. And just honestly realizing that you got to focus in order to make progress. And things are going to be different in life. And so the last years when I did have a focus, I did have a good solid group of people to be with. I was like not doing the best in my classes, but doing it together with people. I just learned the how I learned. I learned how to succeed in ways that I didn't think I could, and I think I came out being a better person that was more in touch with who I was, what the world needed, now I can impact the world. But I also came out a lot more humble too. And so I came into Berkeley super cocky, thinking I was like the best next thing to slice bread. And I came out realizing that there's a lot of people out there that are amazing, and I get to be part of this great Berkeley community that is now in the world, and I get to do good things in the world after that. So that's a very short snippet of 4 super impactful years of being a Berkeley student.
That was great. And as we're nearing the end of the conversation, the last question that I like to ask everyone is if, with your current experience with the curriculum, if students were, if say you were walking down the streets of Los Angeles and a group of high school students were to approach you and ask you, Joseph, why should I join Youth Champions? What can I get from this? How would you respond to that group of high school kids?
Yeah, I would say that what you'll get out of Youth Champions is access to a community of people that one are really looking to grow and change their mindsets and be better than where they are and to be able to accomplish the visions that they want. And it's not just a community, but it's also a community with a set of resources that is pretty incredible to be surrounded by people and like my co-facilitators, like they're some of the coolest people I've recently met. And I think everyone comes from a different part of their journey, and we're really here to help these students achieve. And if they've never been part of a mentorship program, why not try and see what it's like? You can sign up and hopefully be part of it. And if you don't like it, there's other things out there to spend your time on, but chances are you will. And so that would be my sell to the kids that it's like a low risk but high reward thing. And in the world of like time and investments and things like that, it's kind of a no brainer.
And Joseph, thank you for the time. This was a great conversation. Everyone who comes back to these videos, please share it around. This was a little bit of an introduction of who Joseph is. We spoke a bit about Youth Champions, his experience in product management, and his time at Cal. Joseph, again, thank you. We really appreciate it. And everyone who watched, thank you.